Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Happy post-Thanksgiving emotional sobriety. I'm here with Allen and Thom, especially after the last few months we've had. When the three of us are together and recording, I just feel a light inside of me. This is awesome. We're going to be talking about gratitude. Thanksgiving's over, but it's still the season, and particularly what aren't we grateful for, and kind of unpacking that, and maybe in our absence
So,
of gratitude.
yeah, I was thinking, Patrick, when you suggested that topic, I was going to suggest one thing you're not grateful for.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Yeah, gravity.
Yeah. That 1,000%, 1,000%. Like,
I, I mean, it would have been nice if when you came off that rock wall, you just floated for a while.
yeah, well, when I was a kid, I used to love this movie with Jim Carrey called The Mask. And the thing with The
Mhm.
Mask is that he's got all of the capabilities of like your Wile E. Coyotes or your Bugs Bunnies. So like he would fall out of a building, and then the asphalt would just like turn into elastic, and he would just bungee back up after like hitting the ground after 5-story fall. And I could have really used some mask powers while I was out there in my thwarted rock climbing attempt. But yeah,
Yeah. Why don't you update everybody how you're doing physically?
thanks, Alan. I'm hobbling around on one leg, but I have had improvements in my broken nose. I got the splint off my broken nose, and then I wear like a compressor sock thing on my left broken arm, but I kind of take that off for half the day and like attempt to do, I call it my T-Rex arm because it's kind of like my little weak kind of like
Mhm.
forearm that can't really do a whole lot. But the main thing really is just it's the walking, and it's like the inability to really put shoes on and to drive, or kind of like it's there's just no way of getting around it. My life is altered pretty significantly in like the way that I live it for the next chunk of time. And what that does to my mental state is I feel a lot of shame. I feel a lot of depression, or depression seeps in, which I counteract by I've been full steam ahead on my writing project, which I'm trying to finish by the beginning of next year. When I'm in the process of creation, I can kind of get out of that pity party a little bit, because like
Good.
I'm literally putting something outside of myself that didn't exist before. And then also cleaning lots of dishes and cleaning the bathroom. And but I guess if there's any lesson in this, or I don't know, something to investigate, it's like I can't sit with those thoughts. Like I feel I cannot positively reframe sitting here and really like fully admitting my failure in the face of gravity. And a wall of sadness falls onto me, and all I seem to be able to do at the moment is just to kind of distract and to just not think about it. But in thinking about it, there's just a lot of darkness, I have to admit.
One of the things that this brings to mind too is I tell people that most of us have a lead emotion. It's sort of like being right-handed or left-handed. It's lead emotion that basically when something happens, we go with that one. It goes automatically. Like we know people who have anger. Anger is going to be their lead emotion. They're just going to be pissed off first. There may be other feelings that come later. Other people is fear, other people is shame, and your lead emotion from where I'm sitting is shame. No matter what happens, even if it's something is completely outside of your control, all of our control is gravity. Your lead emotion still comes out as a shame message. And it's like so the point of paying attention to what your lead emotion is to realize that's strangely that's the emotion you're most comfortable with. And our challenge is to go underneath it and say, okay, if I weren't ashamed, what would I be feeling? Or if I weren't angry right now, what would I be feeling? That'll take us down deeper in there, I think, sometimes. But I just want to say, if it's you versus gravity, I love you, but I'm gonna put my money on gravity every time.
Yeah, let's get you some gambling winnings. I wouldn't want you to bet against gambling. But no, Thom, as and all of the writing you've done about self-hate and like, working with people, like what do you find is beneath the shame commonly?
Well, a lot of times it's those other emotions that we're not so comfortable with. A lot of times the people who lead with shame are really surprised to find out how fucking pissed off they are, how angry they are about things that have happened, because it's like that's well, we used to, I used to hear people say depression is anger turned inward, but and maybe in a way it is, but I think shame is anger turned inward. Shame is us attacking ourselves. We talk about that should monster or whatever version of that we have. And, so that's what I find especially when doing deeper work and experiential kinds of work. It's amazing how people, you'll see that feelings are layered, and I'm sure you've seen this, Alan, where somebody is really pissed off and they're going through this stuff and they're screaming and hollering, and then all of a sudden they break down into tears, because they hit this deep grief, and they may be processing that for a while, and then they may just start laughing, and it's like, and everybody else in the room starts laughing, and it's a belly laugh, and you're just realizing you're just going through the layers, and I think the main point about the lead emotion thing is, if it makes sense to people, is don't stop there. Look underneath. If I have a friend who used to ask that question in therapy, if you weren't feeling this, what would you be feeling? And he would explore things that way, I knew it was going to be a good technique, because the first time he ever did it with a client we were working with together, I realized I couldn't come up with the answer myself. It pissed me off that he did it, so I thought, okay, I gotta learn this one. So yeah.
Well, you know what I'm finding when you say that is, what's underneath my shame for falling? Maybe it's just this is the vernacular that I can find that, like, I can comfortably express for, I mean, act of God, nature,
Mm-hmm.
just like, I'm just pissed that this happened, and
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that that's very unreasonable. But I don't know. I don't know how to
But
meet this.
yeah, but it's not unreasonable if you look, depending on how you look at it. I mean, it's like, everything makes sense. It's like, if it's unreasonable, if you're pissed and you're demanding that nature change, that would be unreasonable. But the idea that we, that something happens to us that's outside of our control, and that we respond by being pissed off, that seems pretty natural to me, and I think, who among us has not been pissed off at God before? It's like, so if this is your form of leadership, what the hell? But it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think you're too quick to think that it doesn't make sense. I like to look at it that we always make sense. So let's just keep looking for how it makes sense. And it doesn't mean it's not about being right or wrong. It doesn't mean I'm right about this or wrong about this. It's just, if I'm feeling something, I can explain it if I look close enough.
Yeah. Patrick, what came in mind when you were talking about this whole thing, I mean, I'm right with where Tom is coming from on it. The first thought I had was, this was a confrontation with your limitations.
Yes.
See, you thought that you'd be able to manage climbing that rock wall, without any problem. So, you wouldn't have started it if you thought, hey, I'm going to fall. You obviously had confidence in your abilities to manage the situation. Well, who amongst us has not had confidence in our ability to handle something, only to realize, oh my God, this is a real problem. This is a real problem that I put myself in a very difficult position, right? So the first thing that comes up is, this is a confrontation with your limitations. You realize that you can't do anything that you just choose to do. And that's a hard thing for the part of us that wants to claim special status in this world, and that, we can fly. I can fly. I can fly. Remember Peter Pan, right? The kids wanted to fly, right? Now, if somebody was able to sprinkle some fairy dust on you before you did that, you might have had a chance of flying. But there was no Tinkerbell around.
Well, let me tell you something about fear, though. When I was at the height of my addiction and alcoholism, I was renting a series of rooms across Los Angeles, and just kind of attempting to hide how much of a drug addict I was. And I remember when I would rent these rooms and be living amongst and around other people, I would turn my phone on silent, and I would lay in bed, bottle around somewhere, and I would attempt to be as quiet as possible so that nobody could hear that I existed. And I would not be called upon to kind of to do the human interaction game. And just I was so afraid of being in the world, of being seen, that I was just paralyzed. It was be in a dark room, and I just wouldn't go anywhere or do anything. And that was my relationship to fear. And in recovery, there's been a scaling up and up and up, and kind of like a meeting of the things that before I used to just I would just not be able to do. I would not be able to have certain conversations or take certain challenges. And so I guess here's my anger is that, like, meeting this limitation, I'm getting a reminder of like, oh wait, no, some fears are valid. Yeah. So,
Well, it's that, right? And look, you learned that there is a limitation. You'll never do what you just did again. I guarantee it. You will never put yourself in that situation like you have right now. Never.
No.
So that's the other part of this thing is that, as Tom said, we go into the past and learn as much of it as we can, and then we get the hell out of there. So rehashing it and beating ourselves up is not going to get anywhere. But paying attention to what you're learning does. And there's a big lesson in this, man. Big lesson. It's a costly lesson. But I'll tell you, man, the costlier the lesson, the more
likely we're going to remember it too.
The greater the lesson, man. The costlier the lesson, the greater the lesson. I mean, this is a stark reminder of that we need to pay attention to. Once again, we'll come back to emotional sobriety. Emotional sobriety is an appropriate and honest relationship to reality.
Right. Which includes realistic fears, like you said. There are absolutely healthy fears.
If I'm gonna climb that wall, I'm gonna get belayed. Or make sure that there's one of those fall pads down below that's gonna catch me if I come off the wall.
Yeah. I want to emphasize something you just said, though, Alan. Is just in the bigger picture, because I don't think we can say this enough on this podcast. Is spending I can't remember your exact words, but spending time condemning ourselves, beating ourselves up for falling short in these things is a complete waste of time. It's not about debating, am I right or am I wrong? It's a matter of, like my response, I think I've shared in here before, to my shed monster is, I don't care if you're right about every horrible thing you're saying to me about it. You're not helping. There's absolutely counter. It's not just not productive. It's counterproductive to be putting that energy into there. And so if I'm convinced I'm an idiot, then my job is to figure out how I can be a little bit less of an idiot, in the next 24 hours, and I can grow that way. And the other thing is, I just want to say to the listeners out there, I just wonder how many can identify with Patrick's description of literally working on becoming invisible. I have worked with so many people. I've worked with people who are involuntarily invisible. That basically they would say that I had a friend that was just, he would be invisible in his family all the time, and therefore he got invisible. I remember one time, because I'm so damn visible in my life, it's like I said, man, I wish I had that. And he looked at me and he said, no, you don't, Tom. This is a painful experience. But I've also known people who've tried to do what Patrick did. Is just like, if I, and of course it's fear, but it's also shame. It's like, I'll just try not to exist. And a lot of people have done that and try that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just reached a point where if I didn't exist anymore, I would be dead. So I had to kind of start turning the needle the other way. And
right.
I hope that process will continue. I'm going to work on continuing that process.
Well, and then the other thing I was going to say to you, Patrick, I think a deeper emotion right now is grief. You've lost something, man. And that's the other part, is that when you beat yourself up, you don't give yourself a chance to grieve the loss. There's a loss here, man. There's a loss of your mobility. You were talking before we get on. you're aching, you're dying for a shower, a hot shower. Right now, there's a loss of being able to take a shower. So you have lost mobility in your life, and that's a big, big loss, just like anybody that goes through some kind of an experience, an illness or an injury that results in some kind of an impairment or restriction in their life, they experience a lot of grief around it. And most people don't give themselves space to feel the grief. It's almost like, I don't have a right to feel this grief since I self-imposed this injury on myself.
Yeah.
And it's not true. You still get to grieve that loss. You have a significant loss here. You were cruising, baby. There's no cruising going on right now. There's a lot of limping going on. There's a lot of, and like you said, you can't even get in a car and drive yourself somewhere right now. I mean, that's a huge restriction. You've lost a lot right now, man.
The other loss we've already spoken to, but we need to also label that loss as well. And you'll get this throughout your life. When you talk about being faced with your limitations, I promise you, as you go through life, you're going to hit that again and again and again. Sometimes it's just going to be because we got to wake up and realize that we're being too grandiose and not thinking this stuff through and not being wise enough to do that. Then later, when you get older, there are just things that you can't do that you used to be able to do. You lose. So that a little bit of your omnipotence, you lost it.
That's it.
And it's it's ultimately a good thing, because that's more realistic, and it's maturing and growing emotionally sober. But it's like, it still hurts. It's still hard.
On Thursday at the workshop, we were discussing gratitude and things that we are not grateful for. But then we were then looking at those ingratitudes in the terms of, well, what does that then make me more grateful for? And I suppose in my infirmity, I'm just recognizing all the things that I took for granted before, certain mobilities that I do still have, and thanking my lucky stars. I mean, believe me, I there's a lot of self-pity, but also gratitude for, that hand that I can still use to write or to,
well, and that, listen, man, the other thing I'm grateful for with you is that you didn't sustain a serious traumatic brain injury. I mean, because that was a realistic possibility, that if you would have fallen just a little differently than you fell, you could have seriously impaired yourself. And those things, but your leg's going to heal. The brain heals too, man, but sometimes not the way that it was before. And so there is that to be grateful for. But let's talk about this other topic that Tom and I kind of resonated to when you said, what are we not grateful for? It's very important as we do this work to not turn ourselves into saints. I remember I used to do these workshops with Teresa Taduri. I love her. She's an amazing person, and very, just very, very evolved individual. And in fact, she was a songstress for Marianne Williamson for many, many years, and Teresa, I remember we used to do these workshops. It was called The Unfolding Self. And we did a series of these things in Redondo Beach. They were amazing. And she would come in, and she's a great singer-songwriter, and she'd perform her songs relevant to the topic of the time. But I remember one time she was talking about, that in her work with Marianne Williamson, she says, I got to the point where I felt like I was so spiritual that I would forgive you before you even did something to me. She said, it kind of got a little absurd at one point in times. It's like I started to feel like I was losing my humanity. And I think that I want to say to people, you don't have to do any of this stuff perfectly. In fact, you got to create space to do it imperfectly. So you need to rage and get angry and to be upset about what you did and go through that to get to what Tom was saying, to the other side of it, which is going to be acceptance. But you got to first start with your lack of acceptance. I hate this. I hate that I'm going through this. This shouldn't have happened to me. I should have been smarter than this. And then rant and rage about that as much as you need to. And if you do it enough, what we say is you can't know what is enough until you know what is more than enough.
Yeah.
You can't,
That's perfect. And the idea is you said earlier, part of our definition for emotional sobriety is just congruence or perception or congruence with reality. If the reality is, like I told y'all the first time I was back and talked about this stuff with my cancer treatment is, and you all were saying, praising me and saying what inspirational things I said. I heard from lots of people what inspirational things I said as before the treatment began, and I felt really good. I'm proud to say I felt really good about this, like telling you, no, none of that held up at all.
Oh.
I mean, I'm not being trying to be humble or anything like that. No, it fell apart. I just hated every bit of it. I was upset with it. I felt horrible. I felt sorry for myself. I felt alone, crap, everything. And it's like, and I wasn't at that time, I wasn't sitting around, going, wow, I'm glad I'm feeling this stuff because it's so close to reality that I must be emotionally sober. If you'd asked me about emotional sobriety at any one of those times, I would have just said, fuck you. I don't care what emotional sober, what does that even mean? And it's like, but coming through the whole thing, it's like, and then being able to come back to you guys and, and say, no, this is what my experience was, that feels good. I'm not misrepresenting, because I mean, my God, I've spent a lot of time in my younger life misrepresenting myself to be acceptable to other people or to even be, beyond acceptable to other people. And it's like, it's really, really good just to go, nope, didn't have that, And I love this what we're not grateful for, because immediately when I hear the topic, it becomes a challenge. It really is a confrontation. Because I can say I'm not really, if you say, are you really grateful for what you're going through with all this cancer treatment, Tom? I go like right now, I go, if I'm really honest today, I'm not feeling grateful for it. I intellectually, I got it. I understand this, this is a teacher and I'm a student, I'm doing all that stuff. But, it's like sometimes I'll have the experience of gratitude with this stuff, but sometimes the best I can do is just intellectually hold on to it.
Do you guys find that you are more comfortable, or maybe comfortable is the wrong word, but is your relationship with grief a little more healthy and evolved than it once was? It's one of my hardest things to do, like observing my aunt when my uncle passed, the way that she was able to cry and allow herself to really come into full confrontation with the gravity of the loss that she'd experienced. I looked at that like it was Superman lifting up a bus, I only know most of my life I've run away or I've tried to medicate those feelings. I'm terrified of them. And I guess the way that I've evolved is that I know that that's not doing me any favors, that attitude, and that is something that I need to work on. I don't know. I'm very much not on the other side or at a what I think is a healthy place with my relationship to grief, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I thought it was very important what you guys brought up.
Well, I think experience matters, and I think, as the longer you live, the more experience you're going to have with grief. So when you asked that question, the answer was immediately yes. I'm much better, much more comfortable with it. I'm much more familiar with it at this point than I was when I was younger. And I don't, and I don't know that, I'm sure it's a lot of things I've learned along the way, but I think there's a lot of it's just experience and your awareness, your awareness that you don't have, you're not where you want to be with it, but you have some sense of where you want to go. I mean, I think that's part of what will take you there. Allen and I are at the age where we've lost a lot of friends, just through natural attrition, and it's and as far as I know, as long as we're still, he and I are still alive, we're that's just going to keep increasing because that's the age we're at, and it's like it's I don't know, it does, it makes me quite familiar, almost close to grief sometimes.
Well, look, it's one of these things again, as you were saying, Tom. See, when I allow myself to grieve, it means I've accepted a limitation.
Yeah.
I've accepted a part of my humanity. That, part of the human existence is for us to experience loss. There's, like Tom said, there's no avoiding that. But see, in my mind, if I've got this thing, first of all, that I can't handle it, I'm going to try to do everything in the world to avoid it. And that's what we see that's what I've seen happen so much with, and even in my own life. The tendency to avoid is so great. And what we're doing is avoiding ourselves. We're avoiding our experience.
Yeah.
And it goes back to this thing it always has resonated to me, and I'm understanding it at deeper and deeper levels in my life today, and what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing with, like, you, Tom, and Roger, and all of us that are confronting these existential crises that we're having at this point in time. Even you, Patrick, now that you've joined the club, by the way. That, is that Virginia Satir said something once. She says, when I'm really struggling with something, I make a big circle and I put myself in the middle and I start asking myself questions like, what part of my problem is created by my expectations? What part of my problem is created by the meaning I'm giving to this experience I'm having? What part of my problem is based on, and this is the one that always echoed deeply to me, is based on my lack of faith in my ability to grow and cope.
Say that again.
Yeah. What part of my problem right now is caused by my lack of ability to have faith in my ability to cope and to grow with this experience? Wow. And I'll tell you, I think that's been the bottom line to almost every situation I've confronted in my life that's had any kind of major significance, like the life events that we're talking about right here. We're not talking about scratching a knee here. We're talking about significant existential confrontation with reality for all of us. And it sucks. It sucks at times, man. I hate it. I don't want to do this. And then the other part of me knows that there's no way of not doing it. If I don't do it, then it's going to be worse. See, that's the thing I have learned, that I either pay the price now or later. I mean, there's no avoiding, paying that price. I'm going to cross that toll bridge at some point, man. And the sooner I can cross it, the sooner I can pay the toll, the more I can integrate this experience and develop some emotional wisdom from it. Right. Because, we can't control what's going to happen to us, but we can sure have a big influence on how we process it and what we do with that experience.
Yeah, and when you talk about paying the price, I also want to make the point that with the broader perspective, when you pan back to look at that, it's you're going to get what you pay for, and it's good stuff.
You sound like my grandfather.
But the truth is, it's not just a price we paid that's a negative thing. It feels that way. But I think what we're talking about now, I want to go to something, because I think we need to emphasize this as often as we can. Also, when we started talking about not being saints, like you were talking about, Alan, is I think having a realistic expectation about what emotional sobriety, is for any one of us as a human being. It's important. And I think one of the places where we get confused a lot, people get confused a lot, is with the whole idea of acceptance. And I mean, it's like, I sometimes I think this, I'm so clear on this, I sometimes forget to stop and say it. And that is, let's reemphasize, acceptance does not have anything to do with liking what's happening. Because a lot of times to talk about expectations, people will compare themselves to others and think, well, if I'm accepting, then I'm cool with this. It's like, no, if I'm accepting it, I'm also accepting the fact that I'm not cool with it. But it's like, it's still something I cannot change. And it was, I may become cooler with it as time goes on, but the idea is acceptance is not, the only reason we have to work on acceptance is because we don't like the thing. It's like, it's not, if somebody brings me some nice gift, I don't, it's not really hard for me to accept it. I just like it, but if life brings us these harsh gifts, accepting this is a challenge. and we don't wait around to be okay with it. We just get realistic and go, there's nothing I can do about this, or I'm
and I hate it, and I hate it, and I hate it, and I hate it, and I see that
Roger does it all the time when somebody is saying, I don't want to go to meetings, I don't want to do the meetings, and he said okay, well, accept that, and it throws people off. It's like, accept that you don't want to go to the meetings. That's he leaves open the idea your choice is to go to the meeting or not go to the meeting. You can do that, but if your reality is you really don't want to go, and in my experience, when we talk about the multiplicity of our mind, if I want to talk to, if somebody's saying I don't want to do something, if I want to talk to another part of that person that actually thinks it might be a good idea to do it, I need to listen to the one who's talking to me who says they don't want to do it.
Yes, right on.
A lot of times I don't even have to do a thing. I can just say, sit in that chair and voice that, do all that stuff, and they'll interrupt themselves.
Yes,
and say, well, wait a minute, there's another way of looking at it, and it's like,
and that's the other part of him. See, and that other part can't come from the background of our consciousness until we let the first figure come forward. See, it's a Gestalt thing. It's that until you allow the first image to take complete form, you can't replace it with a second image. It just doesn't happen. It becomes an incomplete Gestalt, and so it's going to be unfinished. But as soon as you declare and own the first one, see, this is the paradoxical theory of change. Like Thom says, now another part of you can come forward and object to that or have a different point of view, because we're not just of one mind. We're of multiple, selves, right? We're a population of self. This was really illustrated. And I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Thom, but there's a father and daughter psychologists up in Santa Barbara. They have, I think it's called the Glendon Institute. And what they did is they wanted to understand suicide. And so what they did is they interviewed the survivors that attempted to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge for suicide. I'm forgetting the number of survivors there was, but I think before they put up the suicide nets, there was something like 380 attempts, and let's just say I don't remember the number, let's say 29 survived the fall. And they interviewed them independently so that there was no confounding, right, of influencing one interview with another, right? So this was a naturalistic experience or experiment that they got to follow up and see what happens in this situation. Every one of those survivors said the same thing, that the minute that, this is what they said, there was no doubt in their mind that suicide was their best option. They felt that they wanted the pain to stop, they were a burden to other people, that it was just time to end this thing, that it was over, that there was no hope, right? They were 100%, what they call it, the anti-self, convinced them 100% that this was their best alternative to coping with the feelings that they were having. They were 100% convinced when they stood on top of that rail to jump that this was the right thing to do. 100% of them, the minute they leapt from that bridge and started the descent towards the water, now the other part of them that wanted to live came into the foreground, because the Gestalt was completed from the other one. You see what I mean? It was like, now I acted, I committed suicide, I just leapt from the bridge. And now the part of them that says, what am I doing? came forward. And as they're falling, they're going, oh my God, this was a mistake. It just proves our theory about this multiple self theory, right? That we're not of one mind, but that until we own completely what one part of us is doing, the other part of us can't come in and have an opinion. It's like the guy that says, I don't want to stop drinking. I say, great, tell me all the reasons you don't want to stop.
That's right.
Then I have him go into that for a period of time. And then I say to him, now, as you're saying that, is there any part that's listening to you that disagrees with you? Is there any part? And see, that's what we got to go. So right now, yes, there's a part of you that I hate I'm going through, and you got to own that other stuff. There's going to be another part of you because of the work you've been doing on yourself, Patrick, that's going to come forward, just like it is in my life.
Yep.
You know, with the situation I'm dealing with, you know, with the divorce and the betrayal and all of that that's gone on in my life, and with the children and the damage that's done. This has been a hell of a ride, you know, but there's another part of me. I don't want to be doing any of this. And there's another part of me that is wanting to show up and do the best I can to deal with it. Just like I hear it in Tom, just like I'm hearing it in you, even though you don't even hear it yet, maybe, but I can hear that it's taking place in you.
Yeah.
All the most beautiful things in my life have come about. The most profound things have come about because of my acceptance of realities that prior I didn't want to accept. And it's like learning, I'm right-handed. It's like learning to write with my left hand. You know, it's so counterintuitive to me. And, you know, relating to your recent experiences, Alan, I know this is like the Pee-wee version, but there was a breakup I went through before I got sober, where I felt like an organ was cut out of me. Like I just felt so heartbroken and incomplete, and just like and my misery was prolonged for as long as I would not accept that, or really like could not find a way to give voice to my grief. And I do feel that I've come forward from that, or I'm in a different place. I'm sure I'll suffer future heartbreaks, but that for me was like the beginning of my understanding of like, and the concept of acceptance.
Right on. And listen, I'm going through that now. You know, I'm back here in Southern California this last week with my girls and visiting my eldest daughter, my eldest child, Danielle, with my 2 grandchildren. And, you know, we've done a lot of things that I used to do with Jess here with the girls. And so there's a real sorrow, man. At the same time, I'm loving it and enjoying it. But there's a sadness, you know, there's something missing in this right now. It's not the family that we had. It's a very different experience at this point. And so it's a mixed bag for me at this point.
But what we're talking about is beware of our mentality of either or, because we have that so much in our world. Do I feel this way? Or do I feel that way? Do I think this or do I think that? And when we have that mentality, what happens is, like what you're saying, Alan, the first voice that speaks usually gets all the airtime. You know, but if we actually can change that, we can actually kind of make that a difference at a policy level in our own mind to say, you know, it's always more than one. And so we can create a curiosity within ourselves to go looking for the other voices. You know, what else is in there? Because you've probably seen this, Alan. I noticed after we do this work with somebody for a while, you know, they start doing it quite naturally. It's not, you know, it's because it's really an accurate way of looking at our mind, is the fact that it's multiple. So if we could just teach people, you don't stop with the first voice. You know, and usually the first voice is very often the first voice is not good. Right. You know, they say the shortcut to the work I do with multiplicity is first voice, not me. Second voice is me. And the second voice really is just it begins with whether I agree or disagree with the first voice. You know, this is impossible, and there's no way I can get through it. Okay. What do you think, Tom? Well, I think it's really hard, and it's going to be really hard to get through it. Okay. Now we're already in a better place.
There we go. That's right.
Yep.
Well, what a great show today was, guys. This is unexpected. Huh? It's kind of flowing with what is, isn't it?
I love it.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me bleed a bit about my recent experiences.
Hey,
you're welcome, and I think it's good for the whole process, and I think listeners are going to benefit from it.
Yeah, me too, Patrick.
But hey, it wasn't all bad. I got to take a helicopter ride. They dangled me from the bottom of the helicopter.
Yeah, I saw the picture.
Oh, I didn't see that picture. You gotta send me that one.
Oh yeah.
He's very small in the picture because he's on a stretcher going up into the helicopter.
I've seen those.
I'm going to say you're very familiar with these airlifts. It's like I told Patrick, I think that should be his Christmas card.
Yeah.
If only they could have put like a Santa hat on me, then I think we'd be cooking. But happy Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
and until next time.
Tend your life, tend your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you